Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
What I really want to know is, are we irreverent on this show?
I was thinking the same question, Adrian. I was thinking the same thing. Have we ever really been irreverent?
Have you ever been irreverent? Have you been irreverent, Ethan?
Possibly.
Possibly,
I
but
can't recall.
On this show, I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm a little bit heated maybe occasionally. I mean, me personally, I'm not talking about anybody else. You know, I'm just spouting out irreverent. I don't know. I'm not so irreverent. I'm kind of like calm.
They might be talking about somebody else.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering about that. How are we all doing on this beautiful? It's another beautiful day. I'm going to London today. It's rain there.
You leave today?
Yeah, tonight on the plane. Bye bye. Yeah, off onto got a lot of stuff happening in London, which will be good. We've got investor meetings and shooting a little teaser for a new film that we're funding. So I'll be doing that as well.
That sounds very exciting.
But mainly, I'm going to go see the family. You know how it is. Haven't seen my family in 5 years. My brother and his family. I haven't seen my nephew ever. So we thought it was a good time, since he's coming from Thailand, to meet all the family together in England.
Right.
And, you know, it'll put a bit of stress on my mother, probably. She's 93, so God bless her.
No, she'll love it.
She'll love it. No, we're not staying at the house because it would just be too manic. You know, 8-9 people under her. Because does your mom ever do that? She has to, take care of absolutely everything. You know, like, I'll do dinner. No, when are you going to come home? And it doesn't matter if you're 50 or 60 or 70 years old. Your mom wants to know what time you're coming home for dinner.
Yeah, yeah, she does that.
Don't you think, John? How about you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We come from such a big family that, I mean, that was if there's always somebody to check on you and make sure you're going to be there to eat, and if you show up anywhere, you can guarantee that you're going to be fed a lot. So
that sounds like an Italian family to me. You know,
it's very similar. It's very similar.
Families, yeah. Well, I mean, I wish we had more. I mean, the whole. What's the word? Family unit is, unfortunately, I think it's falling apart in some respects, and in some places it's still as strong as ever, which I think is a benefit, because I think you need to have that for kids to sort of grow in their lives. You know, I mean, unfortunately, with all this different changing in the world today, over the past 20 years, we've had a lot of different movements around the world, and people traveling from one country to the next kind of displaces kids, which is what we're going to be talking about this morning, which is child refugees. We kind of touched on the issues created in Europe because of the mass migrations that are happening over there right now. But we want to talk about the refugees, the kids that are being affected by a lot of these changes, and what happens to them. I was talking to Bev Shahara last night. She said, there's about 10,000 kids missing in Europe now, the refugee kids who have been abducted one way or another by slave traffickers, sex offenders, etc., which is rather scary when you think about it. 10,000 kids are missing in Europe because of that. So,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's before.
Well, it's a 10,000 estimate. They've said it's a conservative estimate as well, which is just, again, it's just staggering.
Yeah.
Yeah, but before we've got migrants or refugees or members of any race, nationality, or religion, you've got kids are kids. This is, and every kid, I think. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I look at, my wife was saying yesterday. There's, in some areas of the world, you just don't know who you can trust with your child, and every kid really has a right to a fair chance in life. I think, at least give them a chance to stand on their own 2 feet and make decisions, but. I think we have to sort of put kids first because they don't have a chance. I mean, I don't know. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on it. I guess I have this opinion. Refugee children, I mean, obviously they face much greater dangers than our kids in our cities. Now, not to say that kids in our cities do not face dangers every day, because there are some areas that, I mean, you've dealt with homelessness. I mean, take about that, for instance, Ethan. Some of the kids down on Skid Row in some of the cities, I mean, that live in cars, etc. They're facing dangers every single day.
Every day.
You know, have you ever seen any of that? Have you ever seen anything? I mean, you've been down to some of these areas. What's
Have I seen any what specifically?
well, you do. Obviously, you've dealt with kids that are homeless, kids that live in cars or live on the street, whatever. I mean, what type of
The lucky ones live in cars, actually.
well, yeah. So what happens to the other kids that do not? I mean,
A lot of times they live in, well, there's a whole tent city under the 110 overpass. A lot of them live there. Sometimes they live in makeshift housing that's made out of cardboard and like planks and shopping carts, kind of a combination of those. I mean, there's whole streets full of them.
and what sort of danger are we talking about here? I mean, obviously, we're talking about streets. This is the basic. We're not even talking about refugees, which we'll get to in a second. But we're talking about the basic in our communities today. I mean, just look around you, everybody. In a lot of the communities we live in the inner cities, you do have this issue, right?
Right. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of these families and the children rely on the LA Mission. But if you go down like 6 Gladys, that whole neighborhood, there's whole blocks for hundreds and what seems like hundreds of yards of whole housing, like miniature little houses that people crawl into at night and shelter up at night. And they've got the typical barbarities you would face in a situation like that.
Do you think a lot of people prey on that? I mean, in that respect? I mean,
yes and no. I mean, they're still very much a community, actually, that look out for one another in an odd way. But people do prey on it. I mean, food is their number one, being able to eat is their number one concern. Water is their number 2 concern. Shoes are probably number 3.
Right. I mean, you talked about communities. I mean, a lot of kids that are in, when you've got a violent, where there's a war or some sort of disruption and there's an emergency, you've got the disruption of families and communities, where there's an acute shortage of resources, which you were talking about, which a lot of refugees, for instance, are confronted with, which obviously must impact their physical and psychological well-being. Because, I mean, the sad fact really is that infants and young kids are often the earliest and most frequent victims of violence. That, disease and malnutrition, and that really follows any sort of population displacement and refugee outflows. I mean, in emergencies, in many, there are search for solutions, but, when you've got the separation of families and family structures, it really sort of affects adversely to refugee children of all ages, not even if they're very young. I mean, there's a record number, an estimated 30 million have been forced from their homes by circumstances beyond their control, whether it's Syria or Yemen, Iraq, El Salvador. And we've had, obviously we've spoken about El Salvador on the show before because Kimberly Moore came in talking about El Salvador and how we were able to sort of help some of the one small community there in a small way by providing computers and books, which are very simple facts to live. But these kids are displaced, and whether they're fleeing extreme poverty or brutal violence, the aim is the same. It's basically, like you said, Ethan, live safely. Where they've got a chance for some sort of better life.
Yeah.
I mean, you dealt with, when we did the LAUSD school program, we talked about 9th Street.
Right.
And the kids that come in from the house there, which is a place that they have for safety for a limited amount of time where they can find an education so that they get off of the streets and they have some sort of hope.
Yeah, they get off for the day, basically. Some of those kids have voucher housing. And interestingly enough, I got a dialogue going with that principal, and he's the one that actually cited that they need shoes down there. So that's my latest project, is trying to get shoes together.
Shoes. Well, that's interesting. I think there's we've got a new program we might be doing. We have one of our supporters, one of our celebrity supporters has talked to me about an idea. And I think we're trying to look at something that we target. So maybe that's something we can actually look at. Yeah.
I've got a hero of the week too, Ethan, that we might be able to put you in touch with as well for shoes.
Thank you. That's the big need. Shoes are the big need because some of the kids, obviously, they can't buy shoes.
It's amazing, isn't it? You can't buy. Quick. We had that issue a long time ago when we were dealing with kids, I think, out of Romania. Yeah. I mean, when Romania was displaced by Ceausescu, there were hundreds and thousands of kids just dumped into, small what you call them, homes, if you like, and just left in hospital beds, and they couldn't feed themselves, they couldn't do anything. And shoes was one of the things a lot of these kids wanted. They just didn't. They lived on the streets and the gutters, and it was shoes. It's amazing when you think about something as simple as that, which you take for granted, or we take for granted every day. Do you know, it's interesting, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees basically stated that worldwide, 1 in every 122 people on the planet is now either a refugee, internally displaced, or seeking asylum. 1 out of 122 on this planet.
Really?
And half of the 60 million displaced are children. That's 30 million kids. And as far as the statistics of how many of these kids are in school, also from that same report by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, 1 in 2 of these children are in primary school. Only 1 in 4 is in secondary school, and only 1% at universities. So again, education is one of the major things that just completely disappears for many of the children in these situations.
You know, the other thing is, I mean, when kids get displaced, they have to travel from one spot to another. The dangers of traveling alone. I mean, we normally, like, I'm going on a plane today. I'm taking my kids with me, but I don't have to face the travel that some of these kids that are refugees have to face. For instance, in the crossing between Greece and Turkey, there was 1/3 of migrants take this crossing, and in January of this year, 1 out of every 5 people that drowned while trying to sail between that area was a kid. So these kids have to face, they're in an open boat in the middle of the ocean. So they've got to face, some very, very hard things in their lives at a very young age, which I don't think is okay, I hate the word fair, but I mean that is the case.
And about half of the 19 million registered refugees, and that's registered refugees, we're not even close to having all of them registered around the world, are children and youth. And that number grows dramatically as a result of escalating crises in places where violence and persecution and conflict are uprooting entire populations. The United Nations actually just this week, through UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Emergency Fund, released a report about this, and this is a group that we mentioned on the show many times, Boko Haram in Nigeria. 32 suicide bombings that they committed in 2014, 150 in 2015, and 1 out of every 5 Boko Haram suicide bombers is a child that they have forced to do this. And 75% of those children are little girls as young as 8 years old. And these are the little...
Stick a bomb on the back of your kid and put them out into a mall.
Right.
It's really what it is.
And
what a lovely human being you are.
It's unbelievable.
I can't even fathom
what this group
that.
is doing.
I can't even fathom that. It just seems to be such a waste. I'm speechless when I hear about facts like that. But
most of the little girls that they capture are married off to Boko Haram soldiers. So basically, it's like here's your 8-year-old wife.
Ugh.
And that's what's happening right now in Nigeria. It's terrible. From the UNICEF report, the calculated use of children who may have been coerced into carrying bombs has created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion that has devastating consequences for girls who have survived captivity. Boys are forced to attack their families to demonstrate their loyalty to Boko Haram, while little girls are exposed to severe abuse, including sexual violence, forced marriage to fighters. Some are also used to carry or detonate bombs. The use of children, especially girls as suicide bombers, has become one of the defining and alarming features of this conflict. And again, it's just raging on.
How do you fight something like this? How do you do this? And then this is not, you're talking about Boko Haram is one section. This happens in many different places around the world. Obviously, we've talked about, the displacement of ISIS and how that has affected many places. Is obviously El Salvador that creates. I mean, how do you stop this? I mean, what do you do? Just massacre the people that do it? Do you try to put them into to prisons and try and re-educate them? I mean, what is the solution to this?
You need to take them off the table one way or another.
Yeah, but what does that? But what does that mean, John? How do we take them off the table? I mean, Ethan, what would you? To be totally honest, I mean, the humanitarian in me would say, okay, let's try and re-educate them. However, the father in me would say, let's just get rid of them. I mean, so how do you do it? I mean, what is the solution here?
In the past 7 years, they have destroyed 910 schools. They forced the closure of 1,500 more schools. And the reason they didn't destroy those schools that they forced the closure of is they've turned a lot of those into bases, forward operating bases, where they can go into more villages, kidnap more children. They've killed 611 teachers, but forced 19,000 more teachers to flee, and abducted more than 2,000 civilians, including the 200 little schoolgirls that they had taken from the town of Chibok a couple of years ago. And this is all from the UNICEF report that was just released a couple of days ago.
So what does the government do? What do you, as a government, sit there and do when you are faced with issues such as this?
Well, I don't think the government of Nigeria, I mean, what do they have? They don't have their own military force that can go in and take care of these guys. They don't, and if they do, they're probably paid off or terrified or warned that if you do intervene, we'll get you and we'll get your families. And that's why I think something like this takes outside assistance. Then the world needs to stand up and say, you know what, we're not okay with little girls being used as weapons. Little girls being married off to 40-year-old fighters as a prize.
The interesting thing is there's a delicate balance here, because you obviously are a foreign power coming into a country, and therefore, like the UN. I mean, I remember watching what was the film? It wasn't about Nigeria. It was about one of the other African countries. How I think it was when the slaughter happened between the Tutsis and the I can't remember. And the UN went in there, their blue helmets, etc. They were just there as peacekeepers, just there to observe. But what does that mean? I mean, what are you doing? They just got killed the same as everybody else, but they couldn't do anything. They couldn't go in there and stop any of this absurdity. They could just go in. So where's the fine line of actually going into a country and saying, look, you want our assistance, we will have to have force to stop this barbarity that's happening. And I mean, to a degree, it's the only way you're going to do it, to create safe zones, perhaps, where people are not treated in that manner. I don't know what the issue is, because obviously, if you're a foreign power going into another country, then you're seen as possibly invading at that point. But
well, I think you have to put it on the local governments and say, look, we are here to help. We are ready to help. We're ready to help right now. And every minute that you don't allow us in, you're basically telling the world, and we will tell the world that you're telling the world that you're okay with this happening to children. And I think you need to shame some of these governments into taking action and just say, look, you don't have to be afraid of these monsters. You don't have to be afraid of it anymore. We, the world, have the resources to help you. Let us go in, let us do what we do, and take care of this, and make examples of groups like this so that others don't pop up. Because Boko Haram, they make statements all the time. They know that nobody's going to stop them. They make statements all the time about, hey, this is what we've done. This is what we're doing to these kids. Nobody's going to do anything about it. And we know you're not, so we're going to keep doing it. And they're just telling the world constantly, this is who we are. This is what we do. We're never going to stop. And they're going to keep doing it until they are stopped.
The funny thing is, as I said, you put a foreign power inside a country to create that. Even the people that are being, I would say, saved, will probably look at this as an invasion, and then get turned against the people that are trying to help them. It's a really tough area to be in, but I think you're right. Somebody has to stand up and do something about it, or somebody has to be given some sort of power in a government to stop it. But one thing you said earlier, John, the important thing is the corruption. A lot of people in the government are probably paid off by these people. They're receiving monies from these people, or they're receiving threats to not do anything against them because they probably have gotten so strong.
Right, exactly. You have bad people who are paid off, and then you have good people in these governments who are probably, as you said, threatened and afraid of what's going to happen to their own families if they stand up. And that's just, it's just no way for the world to just sit back and, we when the schoolgirls were kidnapped by Boko Haram. Well, let's get it trending on Twitter. Okay, great, it's trending on Twitter, but that doesn't stop it.
Yeah, it doesn't stop it. I mean, trending on Twitter.
Exactly.
You know, what does that mean? I mean,
Right.
does it mean that there are? I am sure we have organisations out there that do things. I mean, we started this about we were talking about organised syndicates in a sense, and this is what is happening in Europe, because these kids that are being displaced, these refugee kids that are being displaced, are being preyed upon by organised trafficking syndicates. You know, it's the Europol's chief of staff Brian O'Donnell said that thousands of these minors have vanished after registering with state authorities. So that this 10,000, as you said, John, is a conservative estimate. There are approximately, they say, about 5,000 of these kids disappeared in Italy alone, with another 1,000 unaccounted for in Sweden. And you know, this is a criminal infrastructure. Where do they go? Where do these kids go? This is where I would really be kind of interested to see. There's another 5,800 reported missing in Germany. It's a parliamentary inquiry, and I think the issue is, the problem is, and the European governments could get their heads out of the sand or out of any other orifice they like to keep it in, and basically realise there is a problem. And the problems are, stop hiding behind, oh my God, I shouldn't say anything because I want to be politically correct. Stop being politically correct and stand up and say something. Stand up and do something about these things. I mean, these kids are coming from different parts of Afghanistan, Syria, Morocco, Algeria, different parts of Africa, etc. And not all of them will be criminally exploited, but some of them have been passed on to family members. They just disappear. So somebody's got to stop it. If you're going to bring people into the country and say, oh, you can come in, at least be able to police what happens to them.
Well, too, the plight of an unaccompanied child refugee has become one of the pressing issues in the migrant crisis. Europol has a 900-strong force of intelligence agencies or intelligence analysts, police liaison officers. They believe that 20% of the million arrivals in Europe last year were minors. And of the number Adrian gave earlier, the 5,835 refugee children who were reported missing in Germany, 555 of those are children who are under 14 years of age. And it's just shocking to think that, you know, as Adrian said, where are these kids going?
I would.
Well, you know, the thing is, the reason to be a refugee in the first place is you're leaving a situation that is dangerous. You're trying to find safe haven for your family to make a new start. And when you have thousands of children who are just going missing, then it just you know, this entire journey that you've made is fruitless, because I've gotten someplace and now my children are gone. To where? Taken by whom?
You know, I would love
stunning.
to be. If I was an alien coming to this planet, I'd be looking at it going, what on earth are they doing? I mean, so many people are just creating really bad atmosphere. It's just such a horrible thing. I mean, okay, you have to live. People survive a different way, but you know, and there is when people are in tough times, they do anything to survive. But this is not just surviving. This is trafficking. This is profiting on people's misery, and I think that's part of the issue. Is that it's not a question of survival; it's a question of profit. You know, I mean, you've got. Oh God, I don't know. I don't know where you end this conversation. I mean, Germany on April 12th, which is yesterday. Mm-hmm. They admitted there's nearly 9,000 child migrants are just missing. You know, they're just gone. Where are they? I have no idea. You know, and there's 60,000 unaccompanied child refugees. There are 4,700 listed as missing in January, and it's now spiked to 8,600 cases, including hundreds of children under 14. So,
well, and the worst part is last year, only a quarter of those who were reported missing were found again. That's stunning.
Now, admittedly, they are passed on to different family members. You know, some of them are passed over to friends of family, etc. But you know, they may have fallen into, again, they may have been brought into criminal gangs themselves. But there's no concrete information that that this is true, that they are now being recruited, much like Boko Haram you mentioned about being recruited into these types of organizations. But that is an issue, and no one's admitting to it. But that is a possibility that is actually happening. I mean, what are we doing? It's just spiraling out of control. This is it's wreaking havoc in countries such as Greece, in Hungary, which I know very well, Macedonia, and it's the crushing rate of newcomers of 2,000 to 3,000 people a day.
And at least a third of those are children.
Yeah, I know. It's just, how are you going to keep the infrastructure of that country running? You're going to break the country's infrastructure. I mean, it is a tough thing. I mean, violence and war in the Middle East and North Africa, it's responsible for it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And people leave. But, many, and at that point, then it becomes an economic issue, because these kids are deprived of an education. They've got other basic services. In Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, and 6 other war-torn countries, about 40% of the region's school-age population are out of school, which basically means they're going to be illiterate. They're going to not know how to write. That means they're not going to get a job. Where do they face? Where do they turn to? They turn to how they make a living, and probably they will be the first people these gangs recruit, because that's the only thing they can do.
Exactly. So and you
what,
have NGOs, which are non-government organizations who are working to end child labor, to expand learning opportunities for refugee and displaced children, to support struggling schools by providing temporary spaces where rehabilitation can occur, to make sure these kids get educated. It's the best and the only path to stability for these troubled parts of the world. It's the only way to go.
Isn't it funny that we really do prey on the weak and helpless, in a sense, because really kids are weaker than we are. They're vulnerable. They're vulnerable to sexual abuse and exploitation. They don't have income to support their families. Why we have child labor camps or child slavery, in a sense, in many different places around the world. I mean, around the world, think about it. There are 30 armed conflicts raging around the world right now. Right now. That means kids and youth are suffering because in the violence of war, kids are murdered and wounded, abducted, used as soldiers, sexual abuse, life-threatening illnesses. They lose their parents, friends, communities, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So how do we stop this? It's a big thing. I mean, remember also the other thing we've talked about on this show before is the challenge not only for boys but also for girls. The girls face challenges globally and then it becomes intensified during conflict and crisis. Out of school, girls become totally invisible. In school, in some cases, they're not even there anyway because they're not allowed to be there. So what happens to them? They're hidden in different places. They're at home, perhaps, or they're tasked. They'll meet their family's basic needs, and at that point, they're at a much higher risk of physical and sexual assault because they've got to secure food, water, shelter, clothing, etc., with no protection.
I think this number is correct. It's been a long time since I've reviewed it. I believe in one of our early shows that we found out that there were 20 million orphans in sub-Saharan Africa, and that 3 million of those kids a year commit suicide rather than fall into a life of crime, a life of sexual slavery, just to survive.
Well, you mean
it's unbelievable.
Well, that's the point. I mean, we talked about survival. We talk about people trying to survive. These girls have survival sex. Because they trade sex to meet their basic needs or to gain access to services, and it's a challenge for girls because they're isolated and they've got limited mobility. Refugee girls, basically girls who have been displaced in their own country, face particular challenges. That they've got domestic violence, rape, early marriage, and in an effort to keep these girls safe, they're often prevented from accessing the very resources they need to take control of their own lives. So, is early marriage a risk for these girls? Is it a shelter? That's a question. Is that a risk? What do people? Because for many centuries we have, as a human race, we have had young girls married off at 13, 14, 12, and in some cases 10 years old, 8 years old, as you mentioned. In some countries that still happens. But is that a safety for the family? Obviously, a family has 3 or 4 or 5 kids. One of them gets married off. It takes the burden off the family to have to feed them, clothe them, and give them the basic human necessities that they need. Is it a shelter for them, or is it putting them into further harm because they're basically just being traded for sex?
Well, and two, what are you teaching to? Okay, let's say you have 3 daughters. You sell your oldest daughter into marriage. What does that do to your family dynamic? To your 2 younger girls, know that it's only a matter of time before I'm given away as well. I mean, no wonder. I'm sure. You have to accept that a lot of these thousands of missing children are probably kids who just flat out run away because they know that this is what's in store for their future. It's just it's such a mess. I don't even know where to begin to fix something like this.
Obviously, we've talked about education before, education being one of the things, but educating a society that, I mean, it seems to be a constant wheel that keeps going round. I mean, we are becoming more enlightened, but at the same time, I think as the human race is becoming more enlightened and more technologically efficient, if you like, and the world is getting smaller and information is getting out. Basically, I also think that for many years we were never party to how this happened around the world. We didn't know about it. I mean, it's only been the past 15, 20 years, really, over the centuries that we've been on this planet, that we've actually been aware that these things are happening elsewhere. So they probably still were happening, and now we're going, oh my God, look how much is going on. Well, unfortunately, that's probably been going on for a very, very, very long time, and it's only being heightened now. So hopefully, with the enlightenment and the increase of information that we are getting, perhaps we will be able to start taking a stand and educating those people into a different way of life or different way of behaving, because it's just not the way I think I would like to see my daughter live her life, or anybody's daughter live their life, or child, whether it's a boy or a girl, turned into a soldier, a killer of some sort. I just can't fathom doing that as a father. And, Ethan, you're looking at me. I mean, I can see you're kind of thinking things through your head. I mean, anybody out there going through that process to talk about it and explain it and say, is it right? Even people that are doing these things, though, you people out there that may listen to this show at some point, that may turn around and say, you know what, I did something, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it makes you think twice about what you're doing. Because a lot of the time, if people don't say something about it, then perhaps nobody's going to think about it because they think nobody cares about it. And everybody thinks that it's okay. Well, it's not okay. That's what I think.
Agreed.
Leaving it at that particular moment in time, John, let's turn this conversation around a little bit, because I want to talk about what we have coming up right now. We have a Hero of the Week, I believe, coming into here. So I want you to tell us about Mackenzie Bearup, who you're bringing on. So let's talk a little bit about how we can solve some of these issues.
Yes, and actually, Ethan, she will be calling us in just a second. Today's Hero of the Week is Mackenzie Bearup, who turned her own story of how reading helped her overcome a painful time in her life into an organization that provides quality children's books to homeless shelters across the United States and in several other countries, including the Dominican Republic, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Jamaica. You can find Mackenzie at shelteringbooks.org. And she is joining us today to share her journey. It would take another 2-hour show probably for me to list off all of the awards that Mackenzie has won over the years, and it's amazing the number of books that she has donated throughout her years doing this. I believe she's on the line with us here. You here, Mackenzie?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Mackenzie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Are you in a warm part of the country, or are you in a cold part of the country?
I'm in Atlanta. It's been pretty nice. There have been some colder days, but it's pretty nice. Fabulous.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning, and I just want to find out about Sheltering Books, which you started. And how old were you when you started it?
I was 13 when I first started collecting books, but it didn't become an official nonprofit until I was 15.
So you're 15. How old are you now?
22.
22. Oh, you're old now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, wait. But so let's just talk about the start of this. I mean, obviously, John has mentioned that you credit reading with helping you through a painful time in your life. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. I was 10 years old when I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, and that is actually known as the most painful neurological condition known to doctors to date. And so it's chronic pain, so I've been in pain every day since I was injured when I was 10. And reading is kind of the only thing that can get my mind off of the pain and let me kind of escape into a different world.
So tell me a little bit about this, because I've never heard about this before. This just happened to you when you were 10 years old? You got diagnosed with it?
Yes. It wasn't even a real injury. I sat down and the pain started. So, but what I have, like some people can just wake up and have it. It's typically triggered by something, but it could have just been as simple as like my kneecap sliding out of place or something like that.
So you said that it changed it took your mind off the pain. The reading took the mind off the pain. I mean,
yes.
So how did that turn that into creating sheltering books?
Well, I told my doctor that I loved to read and that reading was such a big distraction for me and was able to help me. And she was actually on the board of a place called the Murphy Harps Children's Center that is in Georgia, and it's a home for some of the country's most abused children. And they had built a library, but they only had 3 books, and one of them was like a dictionary. So she asked if I could donate my old books, but I felt like that wouldn't be enough. So I started asking my friends and neighbors if they had any books to donate and asked them to spread the word. And before I knew it, I had a few thousand books. And then, so that got into the local newspaper, and then more and more books started to be donated to me, and I ended up filling their library to capacity at 11,000 books, and they had to ask me to stop giving them books.
Was that your first book drive?
Yes, that's where it all started, but people kept donating books, so I started contacting local homeless shelters around Atlanta, and started getting in there, and it just kind of grew and blossomed to different states, and then all over the country, and then other countries, and now it's pretty much global.
So you actually had some shelters in Atlanta who are actually starting to contact you after that first one, correct?
Yes, and I still do have shelters contact me a lot, because a lot of them if they have heard about sheltering books, then they find out about what I do and how the books have helped the kids that are in bad situations kind of distract themselves from the bad situations and help them. They decide that that's what they need in their shelter. So I give books to as many places that I possibly can that need them.
So once these huge orders started coming in, Mackenzie, I mean, how did your structure have to evolve to meet that increased demand?
It actually, we haven't been able to give books to as many places as I would like because of such an increasing demand, and it costs a ton of money to ship books. It's about $25 per box of books, like a medium-sized box. So it does take a lot of money to get books out. So I've ended up driving, or when I was younger, my mom would drive to any surrounding states, and then even up, like I live in Georgia, and even up into like Indiana, Illinois, like pretty far away just to bring books.
Let me ask you a question, because do you have have you contacted like Federal Express or the Postal Service, etc.? Because a lot of the time they do give discounts to certain non-profits that need the transport, because we've been dealing with that recently as well.
I have contacted everyone that I possibly can, and I've had people help me try to contact everyone, and there hasn't been any sponsorship other than there's a thing called media mail. That is cheaper, but sometimes they reject it, and I don't know why, because books are media.
It's interesting because this is what we've also found when we were transporting our kits to Haiti. There are some people, some of our listeners may be what they call the airline employees. There are different people that have a massive discount on FedEx or different postal services. Maybe somebody out there might be able to help in this nature, because I'm kind of curious, because I know books do take, they're a lot of weight, and they do cost money to ship. So it is a tough call to do that. I want to ask you something else. When you did your first book drive, where did people get their books from to donate to you?
Oh, it was typically just books laying around the house. They're old books that they didn't read anymore. Their kids had outgrown. Most of the books for sheltering books are, used books, but they're in good enough shape to let someone else read them. And it's just, it's been amazing that people have sent books from all over the country. There's been some publishers that have sent me books, some authors that have sent books. It's been amazing.
Do you know, I think a lot of people forget their garages. Because in their garages, there's so much stuff, or in lockups, there is so much stuff that people never use again. And it's just laying there.
Right.
I guarantee you there are probably millions of books sitting in people's garages right now. And everybody that's listening to this show,
sure.
if you went through your garage and found yourself some books, I am pretty sure sheltering books would make a very good use of them. So just think about that. And maybe there's a drive that we could do actually to encourage people to go through their garage and we'll call it a book garage sale of some sort. I don't know. I mean, we'll just figure out this. Anyway, John was saying that, we've looked at your Facebook page and you've got thousands of books at each event. What sort of structure do you have apart from delivering that, is there any other way you can deliver books apart from yourself and shipping them? Do you have any other structure in place?
I have had people offer to take them on boats to other countries. That's how books got to Jamaica. Is I had a family friend who knew someone that was going to Jamaica on a boat, and we got the books on the boat to go to Jamaica.
Have you been able to visit, Mackenzie, any of the countries that you delivered books to?
Australia. I actually went to Australia for a month and started up a chapter there. Got as many people as I could in Australia to donate their books, and contacted shelters around Australia and got, people involved to kind of keep it up while I was back in the United States.
That is amazing. And what is, as you go to some of these shelters where you deliver the books, what is life like for the children that you visited there?
It can be pretty hard being, seeing kind of what they've gone through, especially the abused children's shelters. A lot of them, you can just see it in their eyes that they've had a very tough life. Some of them told me stories about being thrown through a window. There's kids that have been kept in cages, forced into prostitution to feed their parents' drug habit. Just horrible, horrible things. But some of the kids get so excited to see me and tell me about how reading has shaped their lives and kind of taken away from all of the bad that's happened to them, which is absolutely amazing. And I love going to events for homeless families and like bringing thousands of books at a time and letting the homeless families take as many books as they want. I've had grocery stores donate their grocery bags to me, and I give the kids and parents grocery bags and tell them, fill them up. If you need another bag, come get another bag. Take as many as you'd like.
Do you find people really generous in that respect? Do they ever care about
Pardon?
do you think people are really generous in that respect? Do you think that they want to know what's happened to the books? Do you ever sort of let them know? Is that on your site?
I will post pictures on my Facebook page. Some places like to keep privacy, especially if it's like battered women and places where people don't want to be found. I can't post that, but I have posted pictures of book giveaways that I've done. I will send pictures of I have one picture that's a huge pyramid of boxes of books that were sent out to children's miracle hospitals all over the country, even in Hawaii, everything like that.
Do you have an idea, Mackenzie, of how many books you've collected?
That was my question. I was going to ask that, John.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's good. We're great minds think alike.
Pardon?
How many books have you collected so far?
460,000.
460,000. Just a couple.
Amazing.
And how many years is that? 6, 7 years? 6, 7 years?
Yeah, about that.
So,
my goal is to actually be 1.65 million, because that is how many homeless children there are each night in the United States alone. On any given night, 1.65 million children homeless every night.
yeah, we've talked about that here, and I think it's a tough thing to figure out. The displacement of children around the planet alone is scary, but within the United States as well, it is an issue that we should definitely face.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
Yeah. Mackenzie, thank you for your bravery, because I think, obviously, you're still dealing with your own issues, but you're actually helping other people at the same time. And that's why we wanted to hail you as this week's Peace Fund Hero of the Week. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And hopefully we can, keep finding out more about you and spreading the word for you.
Thank you so much. That would be wonderful. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Good to talk to you.
You too. Have a great day.
Take care. 465,000?
Yeah.
And there are millions of other books sitting in people's lockups or garages at this particular point that could do a lot of good to, as Mackenzie mentioned, to those 1.5 million kids that are homeless at this particular time. I mean, Ethan, we talked about the 9th Street School earlier on, this, about shoes, but that stuff, books, give them some books. It takes away, as for Mackenzie, it takes away the pain, the physical pain for her, but there's got to be that mental and pain for kids that do not have anything. There's got to be some escape for them. Books are a very good way to do it, especially since they probably can't get their hands on technology if they're living on the streets.
Right.
John, let's talk a little bit more about what updates you've got. We have a couple of minutes left this week on the show. What else do you have for us this week so that we can...
Pounds for Peace is back. If you want to get in shape, you can have your friends and family sponsor you to lose weight. We have Camille and Megan, who are personal trainers who are leading the initiative. The Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/pounds for peace. That's the numeral 4, pounds for peace. There's also a link to it that I put on our blog at blog.thepeacefund.org. For more information to bring this program to your fitness center, you can contact Camille at thepeacefund.org. We are also partnering with our friends at Wellspring Hope to build another well, fund another well in Niger. You can go to thepeacefund.org and click on our Wellspring Hope link there. If you'd like to learn more about Wellspring Hope, you can search our archives for our recent Peace Fund radio shows. We've talked to Gil Garcetti from Wellspring Hope, and they do incredible work. And it's not just about building a well; it's about creating sustainable water solutions for these communities that desperately need it. And finally, a reminder to all of our listeners that for a donation of $250, you can dedicate an episode of your choosing to someone special. Dedicate it to a friend, dedicate it in memory of a loved one, dedicate it to yourself because you're helping us protect, educate, and aid children everywhere. You can find a link to our support wall on our homepage at thepeacefund.org. And if you have any questions, you can email bev@thepeacefund.org to coordinate the details. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, and I want to thank everybody that's been listening this week. Obviously, this week, I in closing a little bit here on a slightly different topic, all the people that came out to Temecula this weekend to do the first sword experience was great to see all of you out there. Thank you for joining, and we were so lucky that the rain kept off and the sun didn't beat down on us, but because some of us actually got a little bit of a tan, even though it was cloudy at first. But that was a fabulous day. We're also pushing that forward in a few weeks to come to Chicago. But the last thing also, I want you to also know that on May 21st, we will be having a Highlander dinner. We now have David Abramowitz is coming, who is the show's creator, has a lot of great stories about how Highlander was created, all the behind-the-scenes stuff that was happening while I was making havoc on the set. With Elizabeth Grayson, who's coming as well. Maybe at some point we will be able to get Peter Wingfield, but he's actually in his internship down in San Diego. He may come up. And we may have a couple of other guests. But it will be a great evening. You can have dinner with us in a private 20 people. There's only 20 people allowed in this particular portion of the evening. Later on that night, we will actually be opening up a Peace Fund radio question and answer session. So you can ask all your questions, and then we will open that up to the public so you can join that part of the evening, as well as our live auction. Correct, Ethan? That
Correct.
We will be getting, which we've been donating. We've had a couple of really interesting things that have been donated. And so those will be kind of really great Highland memorabilia, as well as some other fun things that you can have on in your lives that not necessarily Highlander. But anyway, thank you for joining us this week. We will be bringing you next week. I'll be bringing it to you from London, and the week after that from somewhere else. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. In closing, I want to close it with a statement by Kofi Annan, the UN Secretary General. There is no trust more sacred than the one the world holds with children. There is no duty more important than ensuring that their rights are respected, that their welfare is protected, that their lives are free from fear and want, and that they grow up in peace. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll talk to you again.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.